welcome to my channel, Fred Makes Things. This is my first video back after my break. It was a good break. I enjoyed my break. I'm in the middle of my break as I'm filming this because I have a list of things I'd like to film and get done, and instead of cleaning off my filming area when it comes time to talk about this next week, I just decided I might as well be proactive and film first and then not worry about it. So I'm filming this the middle of the month, and it's going up at the end of the month. But if you don't know what this is, you've never been on my channel before or anything like that, today we are talking about the Sewers Club project review for January of 2023. I unboxed this project a couple of 3 weeks ago, around at the beginning of the month, but I needed a break, and I took a longer break than I would normally take, so here we are now at the end of the month discussing it. So this video is going to be broken down into 4 parts. Part 1 is what came inside of the box. Part 2 is walking through how I made the project. Part 3 is pros, cons, and user error. And then part 4 is final thoughts and sign off. So let's just get right into this video. First off, if you don't know what Sewers Club is a monthly subscription box where for about $35 a month, you get everything that you need to make one project. That's the fabric, the pattern, they call it a bonus add-on, but the thread, zippers, fasteners, you know, everything you need to work on one project, not including extraneous things like, you know, an iron, sewing machine, you know, scissors, rulers, things like that. And then for an extra $10 a month, roughly, you can also get the add-on notion. And the add-on notions are usually fun notions that can help with your project but are not necessary with your project. And sometimes they're just like fun little additions. On top of all of that, they also have like a bonus item section, which everybody gets. This is where they always include thread and sometimes other things as well. Could be notions or fabric or alternative patterns or things like that. This month we got extra fabric. Sometimes we only get the thread, and that's fine too. But anyway, that was really long to discuss this, so let's just review what came in the box. So every project, everything that came in the box when I start goes back into the box as I work on it, so that I have a nice easy way of discussing things. Sometimes I forget, but for the most part everything goes back in here. So this month's box, I got the tiger variation of this shell bag. The bonus items were a 1/2 meter of random fabric and 2 mystery threads. I'll show you what I got, and I'll also show you what my mother-in-law got for her 1/2 meter. She got the alternative pattern, or the alternative colors as well, so all of that should be up on the screen for you now. She's really excited for this project. And then the add-on notion was this rinse away basting tip and vintage sewing tin. That's what I don't have. Actually, I might have it in this box. But yeah, so here's the pattern, the shell cosmetic bag, right? There's like the tiger version, which is what I got, and this really pretty vintage floral, which is what my mother-in-law got. The back is the step-by-step instructions. It was pretty easy to follow. They gave you a template, which I traced and cut out. Here's the fabric. I'll talk about that last. Here's the fusible fleece. We have some, like a decent size amount of the fusible fleece left. We have the 2 threads. I used the orange, but the yellow would have worked as well. Right, so orange or yellow, they both would have worked. I liked the orange with it, so I did orange. We have a couple pieces of scrap. Here's the vintage tin. And then here is my bonus fabric. It's really pretty peachy coral. So this project gave you a bit of extra. If you weren't me, you probably have more than I do. We'll discuss it as I lay the fabric out, just because I can't hide it. I did in my unboxing video, but I'll show you what I did to it. Here's the tiger fabric. Like how, I just love this fabric. So I have 2 full tigers left for something else. Here's the blue that came with it, right? I have enough of this to make something else too. Or add to something else. And then we have 2 pieces of this really beautiful orange and purple print. We'll show you this piece first. This is the larger piece. So a decent size as well. It would have been more, but when I was doing my unboxing video, I had a candle on my desk, and I normally don't have candles on my desk. I usually keep them further away from me because, you know, fire hazard, but I wasn't thinking, and yeah, candle on my desk, and I set this on fire, as you can see. So based on where it was, I still managed to get all of my pieces cut properly and have enough left over. But if I didn't have this, I would have had more left over. Stupid mistake, something I never ever do. It's the first time I've ever set anything on fire ever in my whole life. And I just had to do it to like such a pretty pattern. We'll talk more about this calamity and what it meant to later on, but you could even see, I don't know, you could kind of see in my unboxing video, but like you can see here there's some fire damage here. Like it was only on for like a second, but it was enough for me to just totally lose my mind. So yeah, I don't know what I'm going to do with these 2 tiger panels pieces, but I'm really happy to have them left over. And I'm thinking of ordering more of it for future projects. It's right now, there's like 24 meters of it left on Sewers Club for $11.40 a meter. So it's really tempting to just order myself some more. But as of yet, I'm not quite sure what I would do with it, so I'm holding off. Yeah, okay, so let's get into part 2, putting the project together. I'm going to leave this beautiful fabric for you to take a look at as the background to the photos that are going to come whizzing by. I will consult this dude here to discuss it as I went along. But yeah, so first off, as always, I ironed, well, first off, normally I don't bother, but because I put holes in this fabric, I made sure that I had enough clearance around to be able to make this guy without having to like substitute something in or figure something out. And I did have enough, so that was good. And then I beat myself up for a while over doing something so stupid as to set fabric on fire. And then I did what I always do, and I ironed it all out and took a photo so you could see how it all looks out all nice together, nice and flat. Then I cut everything out. Cutting was pretty easy. You traced out, right, your template. You did 2 top rounds of fabric A, right, the tiger, the main thing, and then 2 3x3-inch squares for, I'm not sure the purpose of them, but something like decorative and I don't know. You'll see it when we get there. And then fabric B was this beautiful orange. You had to cut out 2 of the base accent templates. That's this guy here. And then 1 6.5 by 6.5 inch square as well, and that was for your interior pocket. And then fabric C, you waited, and your fusible fleece, you waited until you assembled your front section so that you could have them match up perfectly. So fabric C was cut a little bit later. It was a 1/4 inch seam allowance throughout, and then they've just kind of had you get right into sewing. So like I said, this was 14 steps, and the steps were pretty simple and straightforward. I got this project done in the matter of 4 hours, 4.5 hours, and it probably would have been a little bit of less time, but we'll talk about that in pros, cons, and user error. So what they wanted you to do was to build your outside of your fabric first, and that was taking your tiger pieces and your orange pieces and sewing them together. So they wanted you to attach one of your orange pieces from your template and your tiger together. I spent some time on my tiger too to make sure that I had them nicely centered. So both sides had a nicely centered tiger. I got his entirety of his head, part of his body, and for the most part, most of his nails, but I probably should have shifted it down just a little bit. So yeah, you attached your base pieces together onto your round pieces first, and then you attach those pieces all together so that you had one really large exterior piece with your orange pieces as acting as the base, and then your tiger acting as the main part of your clamshell. Then they wanted you to lay that out on your fusible fleece, cut that out so that the fusible fleece and your exterior match or were exactly the same size, and then they had you repeat that with your interior fabric as well, so that your interior fabric perfectly matched your exterior fabric, and everything would come together nice and clean in a couple steps down the road. Then they had you do your fusing, so you fused your fusible fleece to your exterior part of the quilt, and then they had you, it was optional, but I like to do it, and that was to run a top stitch along your seam between your tiger and your orange piece. They said do 1, I did 2. I did 1 on my tiger side and 1 on my orange side. And I started doing like a larger stitch for this. And I normally just keep the top stitch the same size stitch as I'm stitching everything together. But in this one, I played around and I did like a fairly large stitch so that it looked quite obvious. And I really like the effect that it had. So yeah, they had you do that. So then after your top stitching was done, They also had you do an extra stitch, a 1/4 of an inch in from each side of the squares in the exterior body. So you had to have these like notches cut out in your exterior body. And from there they wanted you to go in a 1/4 of an inch up onto your orange side, like away from your middle join, to create more stability for the bag when the bag is put together. So it's like a stabilizing stitch. I did that as like a top stitch as well. So that comes into play a little bit later as well. But I really liked the idea of having a stabilizing stitch. And then from there, they had you go to your 2 3x3 inch squares of your exterior fabric A that you had cut out. They had you fold them into triangles and then do a basting stitch on the bottom of the bag with them so that they pointed inwards towards the center of your exterior base. And what I did is I lined the tip of the triangle up with the joining stitch at the bottom of the bag, and then I basted them along the sides, and then they matched almost perfectly with the cutout notches. And this is like, I don't understand the purpose to this step. As I mess with the zipper, I think I know what it's for, but if you're more familiar with these kinds of bags and this kind of sewing stuff, let me know in the comments what you think it's for. When I show you the bag, I'll show you what I think it's for, but to me it almost seems like it's an extra step that isn't needed, but I'd be curious to hear what more experienced sewers have to say. Then they had you work on the pocket. And that was, as they always do, they had you fold your pocket piece in half with the right sides facing, with a 2 to 3 inch space on the bottom. Had you sew it all together, flip it around. I clipped the corners, used something to make sure that my corners were nice and pointed. I ran a top stitch along it. They didn't require a top stitch, but I ran a top stitch along the top of the pocket. And then I sewed that pocket in to one side of my interior fabric. They wanted you to run it about 2 inches from the top, or wait, where did they say? They wanted you to run it about 3 inches down from the center of one side. So I did that. I sewed it in place. And then my interior was done. So the exterior is now done, the interior is now done, and it's time to concentrate on the zipper. They gave us a zipper by the yard zipper, so you could pull it completely apart and then attach it back together again. So I did that. I pulled the zipper apart. I attached one side of the zipper to one of the tiger sides, right? And then I attached the other side of the zipper to the other tiger side. And then I attached the interior fabric, right, as you normally do, sandwiching the zipper between the two sides. So your right sides are facing together, and you create like this sandwich with the zipper in the middle. Then I turned it right side out, pressed it, made sure everything was nice and clean and flat. I had to do this step a couple of times because my interior fabric wasn't lining up with my exterior fabric, and that was a little bit frustrating for me. So what I suggest doing is, when you are tracing your interior fabric to match your exterior fabric exactly, make sure to label which side belongs to which side of your exterior. It shouldn't matter, but for some reason it did. And I think I sewed my interior fabric the opposite way of the way that I cut it out, and it caused me so many problems. So just keep that in mind when you're tracing out your interior fabric, to make sure that it perfectly matches your exterior fabric. Or what I might do in the future if I make this again is just trace out exactly, instead of trying to rely on one large piece of my interior fabric, what I might do is just like do twice of the template and cut them out at the same time. And then that way I could feel comfortable that they're all going to fit, and that in sewing it's going to fit as well. It might be a little bit more fussy, but for me, I think it might be the way going forward. But that's part of like user error, I guess. So anyway, once everything is sandwiched together, your interior fabric, your exterior fabric, right? They had you flip it around, iron everything nice and smooth, and then run a top stitch along your zipper, again, to add structure, to keep everything in place, and I think to make it look a bit nicer. Then I don't know if I took any photos after this point or not, just because I like you to see what the finished project looks like all together. And I think from here on out, like you see too much of the finished structure for it to like be a surprise. So what they had you do is, once all of your top stitching was done, they wanted you to turn to the lining side and flatten the squares to create corners. They had you do this on the toiletry bag that I talked about last year and reviewed. And basically what it is that you're using these binding strips to cover your interior seams and make everything look really nice and clean. They said trim the zipper if there is excess, sew across to keep in place, and then align a 1.5 inch by 4.5 inch fabric C-piece on each of the corners. So those are your binding pieces onto your corners. And then you kind of just sewed the binding on. How you did this is that you laid your binding face, or right side. I worry that my explanation wasn't making sense, so I'm going to explain it with these pieces of fabric. All right, so here we have, pretend like this section here is the exterior pieces that you're wanting to bind together, right? So you have like your right side facing and your right side out, and you want to hide all of this, right, in a nice clean seam. You could use a binding strip for that. That's what they have you do in here. Pretend like this is a binding strip and that it fits this size better. But anyway, so you have all of this loose fabric here and you're wanting to cover it. So you take your binding strip, which is going to be 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch wider on each side than your regular strip. See, there's going to be some overlap on each side, right? You want to sew along here, right, using your 1/4 inch seam allowance or whatever. I'm not going to sew this. I'm just going to pin it real quick. Okay, so then, right, you have it a nice clean edge on one side. You're going to take this like little trail that you have on one side, flip it over. You're going to do the same on this side too. Right, we'll just leave that hanging though because it's too big. So you want to flip it over and see how you're going to have like a nice clean edge here as well, right? Then you're going to take this side, fold it in half, keeping those raw edges in, fold it in half again, right? And if this is done properly, right, this side and this side will match in size. Your seam will be tucked. Your seam will be tucked. We'll do one more pin, right? You sew right along this bottom edge here, and now do you see how everything is nicely tucked and sewn in place? Right, and that's basically what you call binding. You do it on both sides because, like I said, your strip's only like 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch wider. And then there it is, nicely bound, nice and tight. So that's what they wanted you to do with your interior fabric. So I did that on both sides. I had a bit of an issue with this as well, but we'll discuss that in user error as well. But basically, once your binding is done, your bag is done. So 14 pretty easy steps. And now let's see how the bag turned out. And here it is. Here's one side, right, with the tiger almost fully centered, right? All of his head, and like you see, I cut off like a little bit of his bottom claw. Then this side, again, he's more centered on this side. Cut off all of his one bottom claw, but I got like the most important part for me. You can see this, how I did this like larger top stitching, which I really like. Here's the two top stitches for here, and then here's the bottom's top stitching, or the bottom stitching, and that is designed, I think, right, to help keep the bag upright. And that's also what I think these two little triangles are for, is to add stability and also a place to hold on to when you're zipping and unzipping your bag. Here's your bag. I really like the black zipper, black and gold zipper they had you do with this little decorative zipper pull. I love this zipper pull. I don't know if I like it so much for this bag, but I do like the zipper pull. Here's your interior. Here's your pocket, some threads that are floating around. It opens up almost all of the way, right? The top stitching's a bit of a mess on the inside, but everything is like nice and held together, so there's no worries about it coming apart. Here are your binding strips, right? There's a little pinch here. I'm not sure how that happened. Here's your binding strips on this side. This side's a bit of a mess. We'll talk about it in pros and cons, user error, right? Here's your pocket. Yeah. There you have it. Here's your guy. I really like it. I really like this project. So let's talk pros, cons, and user error. Pro, I really love this bag. I really like the shape of this bag. I really like the size of this bag. I really like this blue color, right? I love the tiger. I love this fabric on the bottom as well. I liked how easy this pattern was to follow. I like the templates. I like everything about this bag. There's really nothing that I can complain about with the bag itself. Cons. Actually, before I get to cons, I also want to say that I've been like eyeing versions of how to make this on Instagram too. So I'm really happy that this is like the first project of this year. I think it's really great. I also think that it's like a medium difficulty kind of sewing project, just because some of it can be a little bit fussy, and we'll get talking about that in user error. But I really like it, and I really, really like the size of this bag. I have zero idea exactly what I'm going to put into it just yet, but it's going to be able to hold quite a bit. So yeah. Cons. Nothing really about the bag itself. A little bit about the instructions, in that, again, they sent you directional fabric and didn't explain how to cut that directional fabric. The tiger, it's pretty self-explanatory, but this bottom section was not. And as you can see, I sewed it upside down. So if they had just reminded me where to cut the notches before I cut them, that wouldn't have been an issue. It also wouldn't have been an issue if I hadn't set my fabric on fire, because I could have just recut it, but I didn't have that option. The other con, and this is a very weird one for Sewers Club, is that there is no good photo of this guy finished. In the video tutorial, which I highly recommend watching, I always recommend watching the videos, they don't show you the finished bag at all. They walk you through your binding steps and then they say, okay, and we're finished. But they don't actually show you what the bag looks like, which to me is very weird. In the video tutorial, they also said this, if you were putting a pocket in, this is how you would do it. But then they didn't actually sew the pocket in. So it kind of seemed like they skipped a couple of steps. And like even in this picture that shows you what the bag is supposed to look like finished, like you can kind of see like where the triangle is, but I would have liked to have like had a better idea, like a more 360 view of what the bag actually turned out looking like. So it's like nitpicky, but it is like some cons that I'm having because, yeah, like my fabric's up backwards. And I think if they had just said if you're using directional fabric, the notch goes here, then I would have been okay with it. The other thing too is because you had to trace out your interior fabric, it would have been nice if they had said label it in some way so that you know which side matches which, because the whole point of tracing it out after construction is so that they line up perfectly, and mine did not, and it caused a lot of problems. So like little nitpicky things like that. But in general, this is a really nice pattern. It's a really easy pattern to follow. So I'm not knocking this entire process. I'm just a little confused over some of the things that they left out, if that makes any sense. Let's talk about the most important thing, and the thing that I had issues with, which might have been part of the pattern too. I don't know. It could have been me. I may have started this at 12:30 in the morning after midnight, you know, when you probably should not be sewing. And I finished it at about 4:30 that morning because I was really enjoying it and I didn't want to stop. So maybe don't be me and sew, you know, in the middle of the night. Unless that's when you're most productive. And sometimes that is when I am most productive. So yeah, anyway. Let's talk user error. Like, honestly, there's quite a bit of it in this project. I'm surprised it turned out so well. I set part of my fabric on fire. So that set me up for problems. B, I cut this exterior template upside down, so my little buildings point upside down rather than right side up. It's not a big deal because you don't have like a lot of it, but it annoys me. C, 3, I forget if I'm doing letters or numbers. My interior fabric wasn't cut out as nicely as it should have been, so it caused problems for binding. D, my binding, my end sections were a mess. Like you can see there's like a pinch here. The interior fabric doesn't perfectly line up. My binding sections don't perfectly line up. Like normally all of this binding sits a lot nicer. So as an example, this is the toiletry bag that I made as a Christmas gift this Christmas. All of my stuff was taken except this guy and one cord holder. But that's okay because I've kept like all of this stuff. This was sewing. I don't know, I mentioned it before, but I got an advent calendar for Christmas. And this is some of the stuff from the advent calendar that's just been hanging out in here. But anyway, so here's binding of a toiletry bag, right? And you see how clean that looks, right? On both sides, like this ditch sits in the exact same, or almost the exact same spot, right? So it looks nice and clean. right? That's what your binding should look like nice and clean like this. Okay, that's not as clean on that side, but like you get my point. And on this one, the binding just kind of is a mess. And that is because on one side, I had a hard time catching this triangle. I don't remember on which side now because they look nice and clean on the outside, but I had to tear it out like 3 or 4 times before I finally caught the triangle. So when you're sewing this, make sure that when you're basting your piece, this section here for binding, right? Because you baste, I highly recommend basting it first. But when you're doing it, make sure that you're catching these triangles, because if you don't, you end up having like a hole on this whole side, like nothing being caught. And I probably struggled for like half an hour trying to get that binding before I just tore it completely out and had to rebaste it, like flatten it, rebaste it, and put it back together again to make it look nice. You can't really tell in the finished project, but let me say it was annoying, and it was like a massive struggle. So just make sure that you catch these when you're in it. So yeah, that was my main issue. But I don't think it really messes with the integrity of the bag. I don't plan on like selling this bag or giving it away or anything. Like, I'm keeping it. I think it's awesome. And then my last user error was just that my top stitching isn't as straight and even as I'd like it to be on the inside. It looks really nice on the outside, almost fully even and stuff, but the inside's a bit of a mess. But really, who looks on the inside? So yeah, that's this bag. What do you think? Do you like it? Are you as big of a fan of the tiger as I am? Or did you get the alternative fabric like my mother-in-law did? Did you like that? And also, what was your extra half meter? I'd like to hear that too. Off the top of my head, like I said, I can't remember what my mother-in-law's was, but I think hers was pretty cool. But I don't remember off right here, right now, what it was. So let's just go into final thoughts then and sign off. I really like this bag. I'm going to make more of this bag. I'm going to make it a little bit differently, I think. I might also look to the internet to see kind of the way that they make these clamshell bags. Shell cosmetic bags. See if there's other techniques and things like that I could try out. What I'd really like to do is have this sit higher and like together like they have in this bag. Like, I really like how the zipper on this bag doesn't come all the way down. It only comes to here. Like, I like that. So I might look to see if there's ways that I can make this bag kind of like that as well. But yeah, I think that's it. I think I'm done for my first video back. Yeah. All right. I've forgotten how I sign out. It's only been like 3 weeks, but I don't know. Not even 3 weeks, like 10 days since I filmed the unboxing for this. Oh boy. All right. Anyway, so did you get this bag? Have you made these bags too? Like, have you used this pattern or a different pattern? Let me know. Let me know if I should check out other patterns, other companies, things like that. See what other options there are out there. I'd be really curious to hear it. Next week is going to be my discussion of my temperature quilt. I'm filming that next. And then the week after that is probably, hopefully, my next Sewers Club unboxing video. That's the plan anyway. And then we'll just keep on trucking with sewing videos every single Wednesday. So if you're not subscribed and you might like to, think about subscribing every Wednesday from now on until Christmas is going to be a sewing video, sometimes related to Sewers Club, sometimes not. Every Friday is a long form crafting style video. This Friday, if all goes well, is going to be my final Peanuts tree skirt video. I just have one side of the bulbs left, and that's my plan for filming after I'm done all of this. And then starting next week, it's going to be a paint by numbers. I'm not sure which canvas yet, but it's going to be a paint by numbers. And then Mondays are miscellaneous Mondays. You get unboxing videos, some review videos, some like individual crafting style videos. There's going to be a puzzle coming up on that channel shortly, or on that day shortly. But yeah, so if you want, subscribe, see what all that other stuff is. Think about hanging out. If you've made it to the end of this video, thank you so much for watching. Maybe you like it. I enjoy likes. And with all of that being said, I'm going to say again, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for waiting for this break to be over. I really did need it. And with all of that being said, I'll say, I said that already. I'll see you again, or I'll talk with you again soon. Bye!